now like to talk about the bottle economy, and I'll start by asking Lindsey to talk about what impressed her about the bottle economy.
I thought this was a really impressive project, and I think both the sort of thoughtfulness and the innovation that bottle economy, are proposing is really, really seriously impressive. And what I particularly liked was the fact that it was clearly building on other things that have happened and taking a next step, but bringing in, essentially software and technology that, hasn't been applied before. So I think that sort of sense of how do we take something which is in a sense, an age-old activity, which is the sort of notion of the scavenging, but then we actually sort of move on from that and say, okay, well, actually, we can interface this with effectively software and technology that hasn't been possible before. And so how can that fundamentally change the way things work? That seemed to me to be really very, very impressive. And I was very impressed with the comprehensive nature of how they've thought through all the various stages that are involved in this. So, it is about, it's about income for, people on low incomes. It is about plastic waste and trying to minimise that and do something with that in a better way. And it's also about behaviour change. So that was, I think, really very impressive.
Brilliant. Thanks. Lalit, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, Lindsey has covered quite well. So most of the key points are quite covered by her. So my key points would be that their ability to think through it in a quite network sense. So I think that also comes perhaps from their technical educational background. This is what I sensed. They are the students of computer science, and the way they are using the technological gateway or the technological approach to find solution, and there is an element of being fair, providing better economic opportunity of the people of the society, and finding a solution for the waste management. So they have done their homework quite well in terms of finding and how the whole chain of events can run. So that part fits very well. So this is a quite rather strong, solid proposal and an idea to meet multiple requirements. So that part, I really liked it very much, very, very much.
And I thought as well that they were quite open to ideas and developments, weren't they? They responded very well to the challenge, and they seemed like very much in a sort of learning mode, which is so important, I think, isn't it? So in terms of areas to develop further to make their project a success, Lindsey, where do you think they really need to focus?
I think they've got, I suppose my sense was they've got the building blocks. I think they have tested in a small way. And I think really it's a question for me of, how they map out the sort of expansion. I think they're potentially, one of their dangers is that this could explode. And so I think that sort of sense of how they develop a plan which allows for sort of managed growth, it's a sort of weird thing when you set up things like this, that, you want enough energy that people get behind you, you've got collaborators, you can move things forward. You can find yourself overwhelmed by opportunity because everybody wants everything immediately. So I think managing quite carefully, developing a really good plan, I suppose, to sort of say, well, we might have 57 opportunities chucked at us, but actually we think we can deal with 2, 3, 5, whatever at one time. So that would be, I think, something they need to really think about. I think they need to, they're a very strong team, but I do think that particularly in terms of the behaviour change end of things, behaviour change is a strange thing. It's not linear. And so I think thinking about who else they might bring in and collaborate with, who can really help inspire. One of the things, and we've probably all noticed it, is, the sort of role in some areas of sort of social media influencers, for example, so it's a sort of who might be the communicators who communicate with different parts of the ecosystem that they're not reaching directly, and how to build relationships with them. There've been some great examples where, people who are, popular sports people or, other sort of, local heroes, if you like, have managed to communicate with a group of people in a way that somebody else can't. So that would be my sense. I think that that how you do the behaviour change bit in an inspirational way alongside having the mechanics in place. I'd say that would be an area to have a look at.
Right. And Lalit, what would you like to add in terms of directions, do you think?
There are two things which come to my mind presently. One is, I think a bit more testing would be required. This is what I feel. So they need to test it a bit more, how really this model works either in an area or in a region. Because you might not get all the plastic required from a very small either city or a town to be given to a factory, recycling factory. So this needs to be tested in some different location. Maybe the sample selection could go a bit bigger so that they get exposed to the diversity of issues and problems which may emerge early on. This is what I think they should just test it out. The whole cycle, how the collection is happening. Maybe there's an intermediate collection space from where it is collected, who will store where. So when they will start testing it on a certain scale, they will come to know what are the issues. Second, I feel it may not be a bad idea if they have some people in their group with some kind of a socio-cultural background also. So if they have somebody from a bit of a social background, the social element, those who can leak how people behave and sometimes what they communicate, what is the meaning behind that, how this will help them and how this practice may turn out to be, let us say, sometime less healthy in what you had intended. So how do you anticipate, how do you intervene just to assess, talk about those things? So it will be good to have a bit more of a diverse group members with them, which will help them in the long way. The whole issue which we talked about, I think the point which you mentioned in the first, when we interacted with them, to maintain the fairness of the price, that the middleman has genuinely been eliminated by this technological intervention, this needs to be really tested a bit. So this is to be checked. So once they have been able to do, then only one will come to know. So to reach to that point, so I think, yeah, the whole thing is about testing it a bit and being open to invite some more members. But I think otherwise, the idea is brilliant. It connects the problem and the solution on the one plane. So it has a very good potential.
Yes, I think that those points about having further other skills in the social science area, political economy, and so on are absolutely crucial. Because I suppose for me, the key sort of indicator of whether this is a real success is that it goes beyond just cutting out the middleman and actually almost allows that new set of resources that is created to be focused on broader development, empowerment, and change. So, and I think how they manage that, I mean, I would say they need obviously NGOs as collaborators. They need to, so they can bring influence on the big company monopoly that's they're going to be selling to, and build further collaborators so that it's much more than a technical platform, that it's actually a social project for substantial change. And that is, and they do need extra skills for that, but I think they've got a very strong basis. And I suppose the challenge of, the slowly building it up, and maybe, as Lindsey was saying, and focusing on particular areas, but also the relationships in those areas, building the links to other organizations and so on, so that they're building the whole, again, they're piloting the whole, all the elements from the beginning, I think is crucial.
And
one more point. Okay, go ahead.
No. So all I was going to say is, as you say, making sure that the private sector companies that in the end are the ones who need to be buying the plastics, that there is enough influence, pressure, I don't know what you want to call it, to make sure that they are going to behave in a bit more of a social way, because I think there's certainly a danger that if what we end up with is a sort of very large volume of plastic, that they just drive the price down, and that isn't really going to provide the desired outcome. So finding the routes to make sure that that's not acceptable is quite tricky, and certainly I've seen that in some cases in some parts of the world, the reason why it becomes unacceptable isn't necessarily a sort of linear one. It's because the public mood has shifted. And so because the public mood has shifted, then the companies, start to go, oh yeah, actually we need to behave in this much better way. And so I think paying attention to what will create those shifts is really important. And as you say, Henry, that's going to come from probably some slightly diverse members of the team who are, more familiar with how you do some of that. So yeah, I think that would be essential. But I do think it is excellent. I think, what they've done is amazing, and yeah, really, really fantastic project.
Lalit, a final thought?
Yeah, this project has an absolutely huge potential if they can visualize it in a very holistic ecosystem perspective. It is very easy because it looks like it is financially it could be very appealing. So what may work easily in this case is they can create a huge network. But how that network can play out the role of a positively or a more conscious or evolved role player in a society as a stakeholder, I think that layer has to be tapped into and built on. The chances of that connecting, for example, any state government, local government, national government, of course, would like to support some kind of pollution control. So if you tap into that, if you tap into what I was talking about in India, we have CSR funds, corporate social responsibility. Yeah. If you tap into that, if you tap into the social awareness, this typical, they call it a 5R of reduce, recycle principle. So they will need to be having some kind of holistic vision where they are talking about a holistic change making, environment cleanliness, better way of life, improving the livability and the vibrancy of an area, health of people, well-being, more in that. And within that, this is one of the first and early step. So if we have a vision like this, they will be in a better position to gear and see the future steps. Otherwise, I mean, as we mentioned, it should not be limited and remain at the level of just a automated collection and sorting center and very easy, convenient software-based program which can allow people the payment and everything. So I think it has a much more potential.
Yeah. And of course, the risk with a single, if they have a single customer, then that they have an organization with potential huge power.
Yes.
To actually determine the outcomes in their favors. Well, that's. I think it is a fascinating and very exciting project, and we look forward to working with you further and supporting you as far as we're able to take this forward as a truly dynamic social change project. And thanks very much for talking to us.